Hi, so this scale pattern, it's a bit of a bold claim, isn't it, saying this is the most useful scale you can learn. But I really think this is probably the scale pattern that I use the most. And when you see the title of the video, you probably think it's going to be this one. It's a pentatonic minor. Usually people learn it in A as well, which is where I just played it. Now I use that a lot as well, and everyone uses that a lot. But there's this other one, a particular pattern as well, which is, it's a real simple scale, but I use this all the time and it's so incredibly useful, and there's a lot of different ways you can sort of apply this, or different situations you can apply it to, more so than something like a minor pentatonic even, I think. And all it is the major pentatonic scale. But the way you normally learn this, if we're in A, most people learn the major pentatonic in this way. That's good, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's how I teach it most of the time. And if you do grades and things, that's the one that you'll learn first. And that's still important to know. But this other one, it's the same notes as that, played like this. Now there's a couple of advantages of this. The main one is that it's then easy to extend that further, whereas when you do this, you're kind of stuck there really. You can't very easily go into the next octave. You'd have to do this. And like that, all along one string, which isn't very sort of natural. So you're kind of stuck with that 2-octave pattern when you do that one. With this one, the last note is here. Well, that's on the 2nd string, so I've still got another string left. So I can go, and then I can start to move up if I want. So that's one advantage. Now we're not getting into that last part of that on this video. We're just sticking to the 2-octave pattern, but that's just something worth mentioning. That's one good thing about this pattern. Another thing that's good about it is this isn't better, it's just different to the standard pattern. With the standard pattern you can do lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs. It's good for that, good for bends. Well, with this other pattern you don't really tend to use bends with it, or many hammer-ons or pull-offs, maybe 1 or 2. But you'll do a lot of slides with it. So it's just different. You're going to be playing the same notes and get different sound. So for example, I can just use 2 fingers, 1st and 3rd, and I can slide on every other string. Now that's also an easy way to memorize the pattern, like this. And if I was going to continue, I'd end up sliding on the 2nd string. So whichever string you slide on, you don't then slide on the next one. So I slide on the 6, the 4, and then I would be sliding on the 2 if we were extending it. So I'll just do that again. Pick, pick, slide, pick, 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 slide, pick, 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 like this. And if you were to descend, you want to always leave the slide as late as you possibly can, so you go like this. Pick, pick, slide. So we're sliding on the 1st finger, whereas on the way up the scale we were sliding on the 3rd. We were going on the way back. We don't go like this. It's just somehow more comfortable to play that way. So I'll just ascend and descend using the slides. So that's an A pentatonic major scale. Now, one of the things that's good about this is that when you're playing like a sort of a Hendrix style, kind of Curtis Mayfield sort of style rhythm part with little lead fills and things, if you know Jimi Hendrix stuff like Little Wing and Carl Smader Sand and things, you'll know what I'm talking about. Wing Cries Mary does it on that. This pattern is nicer to use for that, because let's say you're playing an A major chord, bar chord. Well, the pattern comes straight off of that chord really neatly like this. Whereas the other pattern, the standard one, is kind of down there when our chord's here. So it's I mean, there are other A chord shapes you could use that are more down there, but this is the one that most people will be using most of the time. So this scale lends itself to playing in and around the chord shape more than the standard pattern. And that's really the main reason why this is a good scale to use, and why I use it a lot. So you can do string skipping with it, for example. That's quite a cool little trick with it, where I'll maybe play the first 3 notes, miss the 5th string, go to the D string, play those 3 notes, which are actually the same notes I played here, just up an octave, and then jump to the A here. You could swap the first finger and you could go same 3 notes again. Not that radical, but it's not something you'd think to do here in that standard pattern. And then the main thing that's good about this is if you've got a few major chords that aren't necessarily all from the same key, which does sometimes happen in songs. So for example, I could have a G, then an A, then a B. But if I had those 3 together in a song, in a chord sequence, and I had to solo over them, there isn't a key that's got all 3 of those chords in. There just isn't. So there's not one scale that fits over all of those chords. There's scales that nearly do, but there isn't a scale that covers all of those chords. Not that I'm aware of anyway. Because they're not all from the same key. There isn't one key that has all 3 of those chords in it. So that means that what you could do, like the Hendrix kind of approach, would be to play a major pentatonic over each of them. And usually when you just change scale for each chord, it can sound a bit contrived, and it's not really the way lead playing normally works. But for this, it just seems to work well, and it certainly works better than playing notes that aren't going to fit one of the chords. So over the G, I could do this, or part of that. Might just be something simple. And over the A, I could do this. Over the B. So I'll use that as an example. I've got a loop pedal here. I'll put the headphones on for this so I can hear my loop, and I'm just going to play those 3 chords, and then I'll try to demonstrate this thing I'm talking about over the top. And to begin with, I'll make it very obvious what I'm doing, and then as the loop goes around a few times, I'll start making it a bit more subtle, but I'll still be doing exactly the same thing. I'll still be swapping the scale on each chord. Okay, hopefully you could see from that's a demo that I was switching scale for each chord, and to begin with I made it very obvious what I was doing, and then as it went on I was probably blurring it a little bit so you couldn't quite see when I was switching scale so much. but it was still not very subtle, you know, and you can, once you get the hang of that, you can become much more subtle with it and much more musical with it than what I just played. And it's really effective, especially if you then extend the scale a bit further. So that would be the next step once you've got the hang of doing what I just did then. If you try this, maybe just try it with 2 chords. It would be a bit simpler. So you could take that just G to A, or just A to B, or you can do it with any 2 chords. And you could also do this with a whole series of chords. If they're all majors, obviously they've got to be majors for this. So you might think, well, what happens if there's a chord in there that's minor and you want to use this same kind of thing? Well, for the minor, I would, for now, just stick with the standard minor pentatonic. There is a pattern that's similar to this one that you can use for minor, but I'll look at that on a separate video. I just wanted to go over the major one today because it really is so incredibly useful. So I'll just demonstrate something again with a loop pedal where I include a minor. So let's say, what shall I do? I'll do G major, A minor, B flat major. Now so far that's 3 chords that you wouldn't find in a key together, so that would actually work quite well for the purpose of what we're talking about. They might sound a bit odd together, but let's add one on the end as well. We'll add F major on the end, so I'm going to do G major, A minor, B flat major, F major. Bit of a weird sequence, but we'll try that and we'll see how it fits. Okay, so you can probably see from that what I was doing. It's a bit kind of frantic, sort of swapping for each chord, but that's the purpose of the exercise, because this is an exercise really, what I'm talking about. I'm not saying you would do this in all of your guitar solos, but to be able to dip in and out of this kind of idea with this pentatonic major pattern is really useful. Another way you might use this is you might get one chord in a sequence that's out of key. Well, traditionally what you would go for, people will go for there is the arpeggio of the chord. But sometimes the pentatonic major will work as well if it's a major chord. So it's totally out of key, go into pentatonic major over that chord. There are times where that won't work quite as well as an arpeggio. But if you're going for that Hendrixy kind of sound, like the Wind Cries Mary sort of sound, or the Little Wing kind of sound, then it usually works. So it's a great pattern, definitely worth knowing if you don't already use it. Okay, any questions, please put them in the comments. Click like if you like this one, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks.